In the Twin Cities in Minnesota, rent control was on the ballot, and it looks like voters approved it. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. Alright, so looks like bad news for landlords up in the state of Minnesota, okay? So yesterday they had the election up there in Minnesota, and rent control passed, okay, in St. Paul, and the referendum to allow there to be a rent control option, it passed in Minneapolis. But the article I'm going over today is really going to be talking about what's going on in St. Paul. And now that rent control has passed, I'm really worried about the state of the rental market up there, what the landlord's going to have to go through, and the complete mess that they've created. So I'm also going to be going over an article that talks about why rent control is bad. But before I get into these two articles, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below, and let me know what you think. Did you expect that Minneapolis and St. Paul would have such a big push towards rent control like this? I mean, I can't say that I'm surprised. Those cities have been proven to be very progressive, very left-leaning, and very anti-landlord, very tenant-friendly. And when I saw that these things were going to come up to the ballot, I knew that there was a very good chance that it would pass, because there's more tenants than there are landlords. And people who don't rent properties, they don't really care about the fates of the landlords. But they're going to care pretty soon when they start seeing exactly what this kind of thing has caused. So the article I have today comes from fox9.com, and it says, St. Paul rent control ballot question approved. Yeah, let's see what this article says. Voters in St. Paul approved a ballot question Tuesday to enact one of the strictest rent control measures in the nation. The ballot question asked voters whether landlords should be prohibited from raising rents by more than 3% in a 12-month period, regardless of whether there is a change in occupancy. However, landlords could apply for an exemption. It was the only question on the ballot for St. Paul residents this year. Wow. Okay, so landlords will be limited to 3% increase in rents. So let's say, for example, you have a tenant in your property who right now is paying $500 a month. Okay, so 1% of the $500 a month would be, what is that? So, 10% would be $50, right? 1% would be $5. So you'd only be able to raise their rent $15. So for $1,000, you'd only be able to raise their rent $30. Doesn't matter what the market rents are, doesn't matter what inflation has been, doesn't matter if the property taxes went up on the property, doesn't matter if utilities went up, nothing matters except for the law says you can't raise rent more than 3%. Wow, I mean, this is going to be absolutely destructive to landlords, okay? And I just don't see how they're going to be able to handle it, especially with all the inflation, everything going on now. They're just pouring money into the economy that's not necessary. They're spending out the yin-yang up in D.C., and inflation has skyrocketed, meaning that every dollar that you get goes just a little bit less. It doesn't go as far. It just doesn't go as far. So yeah, landlords are pretty screwed over with this. So, obviously I am very much opposed to rent control in any fashion, anywhere, for a multitude of reasons. And I'm not very good at verbalizing why I'm against it. So I actually looked up and found an article that goes over the topic a little bit better than I could. So this article is coming from brookings.edu, and it says, what does economic evidence tell us about the effects of rent control? And this article is from 2018, but of course it still applies right now. And I'm not going to read the entirety of the article. I'm going to kind of skip down into the juicy parts, okay, the good stuff, the real reasons, okay? So let's get into it. New research examining how rent control affects tenants and housing markets offers insight into how rent control affects markets. While rent control appears to help current tenants in the short run, in the long run, it decreases affordability, fuels gentrification, and creates negative spillovers on the surrounding community or surrounding neighborhood. A substantial body of economic research has used theoretical arguments to highlight the potential negative efficiency consequences to keeping rents below market rates, going back to Friedman and Stigler in 1946. They argued that a cap on rents would lead landlords to sell their rental properties to owner-occupants so that landlords could still earn the market price for their real estate. Rent control can also lead to a mismatch between tenants and rental units. Once a tenant has secured a rent-controlled apartment, he may not choose to move in the future and give up his rent control, even if his housing needs change. This misallocation can lead to empty nest households living in family-sized apartments and young families crammed into small studios, clearly an inefficient allocation. Similarly, if rental rates are below market rates, renters may choose to consume excessive quantities of housing. Rent control can also lead to decay of the rental housing stock. Landlords may not invest in maintenance because they can't recoup these investments by raising rents. And those are all of the points that I've gone over before in my many different videos, okay? So, we'll start off with the first one there where it says that, let's see here, they argued that the cap would lead to landlords selling their properties, and that's exactly what's going to happen, okay? If a landlord can't make a profit by renting out their property, they're going to sell to owner-occupants, or they're going to convert the thing over to condos. That's what they were doing for a long time, a lot of condo conversions, and those rental units will just disappear from the rental market. And less rentals means that the cost is going to go up for those people who are looking for affordable housing. So that's a bad thing. I know that that's hard to believe for the people who are in, favor of rent control, but that's exactly what's going to happen. So the next thing they talk about here is that it creates a mismatch between tenants and rental units, saying that tenants, they won't want to leave the rental unit because they got a great deal on it. So imagine you got yourself a 3-bedroom apartment, right? And you're only paying $500 a month. Well, even if you're a single person, you are not going to want to leave it because you got such a great deal on it. Well, in a normal rental market, you wouldn't get a 3-bedroom apartment, or you wouldn't keep it long term because the rental rates keep going up to such a high level. Well, in this mismatch, what happens is this person keeps the unit, and then the family who does need a 3-bedroom, they can't get it because you have somebody in there who's staying who doesn't need that much space. That person would be fine in a studio or a 1-bedroom. So yeah, you have this weird mismatch caused by too low of rents. The market should be the one who dictates who's in it or not, okay? Not the government making the price levels, okay? Let's see what else it says here. So it says that if rental rates are below market rates, renters may choose to consume excessive quantities of housing. And this is another interesting thing, and it kind of goes back into the other one, but if you could afford to rent an apartment, right, and why not get multiple apartments, okay? You can rent 2 apartments, then the people who really do need it, you sublet to them. That's what's happening in New York, okay? People aren't saving any money on rents because of rent control. In a lot of cases, the people who are unable to get a rent controlled unit, they have to sublet a unit from a tenant who is leasing out their rent controlled unit, and then they have to pay market rates. That's a complete scam and a joke as well. So yeah, you'll have 1 or 2 people who are hogging up, multiple rent-controlled units, and that shouldn't be happening, okay? And finally, they say landlords may not invest in maintenance because they can't recoup the investment by raising rents. And that is another good fact. And in fact, the rent control video that I made just about a week ago, that's exactly what the issue I was covering was, okay? Landlords are... they're just not doing maintenance. They're not doing any unnecessary upgrades. They're just keeping the place patched together with the bare minimum because there's no profit in it for them. There's no incentive for them to do anything more than the bare minimum. So yeah, it really, really impacts the quality of the housing in the area. So yeah, this Brookings.edu article, it actually goes over some other interesting facts as well about how rent-controlled units actually lower the property values of even non-rent controlled units in the same area, but I'm not going to get really into that. The main point that I'm going over today is, rent control, it's not good. It's not going to be good for St. Paul. It's not going to be good for Minneapolis when it passes up there, and it's a complete disaster when it comes to property rights for landlords.